I gotta say, it's really impressive to like see you now, and then like you mentioned, you like grew up, homeschooled and have social anxiety, because I would never be able to tell. Like even like from seeing you present at Lone Star and stuff, it's like, man, this guy's really charismatic and like he's really good at presenting. At the same time, some people are good at presenting, but they still lose crowds. And then there's some people that are really good at presenting, and then people also want to hear what they have to say. And I think you have that as well. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah, so it's like, wow, that's really impressive.
Honestly,
I'm sure it was a lot of work, sorry.
Yeah, no, I give glory to God on that. I was at a point when I was younger, and this was till I was a teenager, 16, 17 years old, where I really started working on it and praying through it. But I couldn't look people in the eyes. Mm-hmm. And like, I remember distinctly being 14 or 15, and I was invited to a high school party, literally next door neighbor's house. And I went there, and I walked around, and I just was physically shaking for like 20 minutes and didn't talk to a single person, and then I left. And that was who I was. And I just kind of, I don't know, over time, I started playing professional disc golf, actually, is really what happened. And a lot of the dudes there are older than me, who were competing at the same level I was, and they just roasted the hell out of me all the time. And so, but it wasn't like hateful or bitter or anything.
Right, it's more like, sports banter kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And so through that, like, I just learned, like, not to take myself so seriously, number one, and number two, but to recognize, like, focus on being the type of person you want to be around, and then the rest will fall into place.
Yeah, that's great. That's actually great advice.
Yeah, I stopped overthinking social interactions so much, and just, think of all the ways that something I say or do could be interpreted negatively, and it's like, it just takes the pressure off. Just enjoy the interactions you have with people, and be a cool dude. People will want to be around you.
Yeah, no, that's like, you hit the nail. That's exactly it. When I first, I don't know if I had social anxiety, but like, I was really shy. My first experience, like talking to like a lot of people, or like doing debate and that kind of stuff. I did something called extemp. I don't know if you know what that is.
Extemporaneous speaking.
Yeah, extemporaneous speaking. Yeah. I went into the room. My first tournament, my first time ever talking in front of people. I went into the room. I don't even remember the topic. I spoke for like 30 seconds, paused for another 30 seconds, cried a little bit, and then said, "Thank you," and ran out the door. And I was like sweating balls. I was red as hell. And I was like, "I'm so sorry. This is my first time." And I ran out that door. And I was like, I feel so bad for the judge at that time. But
was that your first event? Like,
my first event ever. And my coach was kept telling me, you just have to do it. You have to get the experience for it. You have to have some bad experiences so you can then build up from that.
I feel like there's a better event to start with.
Yeah, I think so too. But
extemp is rough, man.
Yeah, it's rough. It's really rough. Even, when I was leaving high school, my best was probably like a 6. The goal was to do a 7-minute speech, 3 points, 2 sources on every point. My best was probably like a 5.5, 6-minute speech with made-up points and made-up sources, according to the Council of Foreign Relations, and then you just say some bullshit.
Yep.
Or something credible.
I didn't do high school debate, but I went into college debate with Ben Maniscalco.
Right.
We joined the same team in Lone Star, and it was very fun. I did IPDA, which is an individual kind of public forum debate, and then parliamentary debate, which is team-based. And then I did persuasive speaking primarily, which was basically you'd find a compelling cause, a cause that maybe a lot of doesn't receive a lot of attention. And what you would do is you would research it. You'd create a compelling speech based off of it, and then there would be a sort of call to action at the end.
Right.
And so what you'd be able to do is you'd have to essentially craft the speech about 10 minutes long.
Yeah, 10 memorized, yeah. I did something very similar. We called it oratory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was, you have to stare the judge in the eyes the whole time, not to make a single mistake. If you have one slip up, if you say if instead of it, they start writing down on the pad.
Yeah, and I'm sure in college it's much more. I never wanted to do college debate because of how difficult it is. It's a different animal. I'm sure that was like extremely stressful too.
I mean, there was a lot of people I've seen who are high school debaters who are very impressive, and since I don't have experience with it, I can't speak to like the difference in ability. I would imagine there might be like a different threshold, like the best are probably better, but I guarantee you there's better high school debaters than there were
Oh, really?
oh man, some of the college debaters were some of the arguments.
Man, that makes me feel like I should have done it.
There was one debate I had. I shouldn't have won it because it was such a bad position, but it was individual debate. And in the IPDA debate, essentially what you had is you were given a topic and you were either the affirmative or the negative.
Okay, yeah.
And so you'd have 30 minutes to research the topic that you had, create your arguments, and you debate for about 35 to 40 minutes total, alternating, rebutting. And so I think the topic that I won on to win this tournament was the United States federal government should not administer aid to impoverished countries. And I was the affirmative. And I won that debate.
Nice.
And I should probably not have won that debate.
Nice.
But
man, that's so skewed. That's so one-sided.
But I mean, essentially one of the arguments, I mean, I made, I think, some pretty decent ones that they just didn't expect and couldn't counter. Like, for example, made the argument that when we consider how we aid foreign countries, we need to only look at the precedent of what U.S. foreign aid has looked like to come to different countries. We install our own force of government. We utilize their resources for our own gain. We end up honestly creating destabilization in the country in many cases. And then beyond that, when we consider, giving aid to impoverished countries, many countries have a different value system than we do. And so when we suppose that another country desires to have the same level of wealth or standard of living that we do, we impose our own ethnocentric beliefs upon them, and the other person just wasn't prepared.
Yeah, you have nothing to say against that. Yeah, I mean, so I would imagine, because I did Lincoln Douglas debate, which is pretty much the same thing, but you had a lot more time to prepare your AF and your neg, and then I did Congressional Debate, which is I don't think the same as parliamentary. It's you have like 30 people in a room, and there's a docket, and you debate on bills. And they pre-release the bills, so it's all formal. It's all very procedural. You come in and you elect the Speaker of the House. I guess sometimes it was like Senate, and I don't even know. Like you would vote like the Vice President or whatever, and they would like set the docket depending on how popular the bills were, and then you'd go, well, docket 1. Docket 2 or docket 3, and there was like different orders, so you'd have to vote on that, and then you'd have to vote what goes inside of those, and everything was really procedural when it comes to like, would anybody like to speak? You raise your thing, and it's like Representative Guerrero, Representative Files, and you have a minute and a half to give your AF or your neg for it, and then someone will come up and counter that or support you, and then it just goes on till someone says, hey, I move to vote on this bill. And then it passes or fails, which was a complete waste of time. But it was fun when you were when you were in the thing. And then I also did CX cross-examination debate, which is a 2-on-2, which is an hour and a half of the worst time in your life. You're just debating two other people in the room for an hour and a half, and it's just emotionally and physically exhausting.
I think cross-examination was always one of my favorite parts because, for me, I think sometimes I didn't flow as well as I wanted to during like the initial the beginning of our arguments when we lay out our case for either the AF or the neg. But during cross-examination, I'm typically able to think on my feet pretty quickly, and I can internalize what we're arguing pretty well and what the good or bad points are. And it was the same thing like whenever we did honors day at the honors college.
Right.
Like, the presentation was stressful. When it got to the questions, that was my favorite part.
Yeah.
Because I knew about the material.
You knew your stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, if you asked a question, like, I could find a way to justify or acknowledge, like, a shortcoming of the research. And, like, even acknowledging a shortcoming can be something that's, recognized as admirable, although not in a debate context. It's like, if you recognize a shortcoming, you just lose the debate.
You can't acknowledge those in the debate. I did it with my best friend. And we had the time of our lives. He's a much better speaker and bullshitter than I am, but I was really good at like you said, internalizing and like picking up on whatever argument they were saying, and remembering, okay, so we have a source that combats what that says. And so I would like sit down and write down all the notes. I'm like, hey, you need to talk about this, this, and this. And you'd go up there and do it. And then when it was my turn, like I never flowed like I wanted to either. But, I held my ground. But those were some of the best times because like really puts you, at the edge of everything, like at the edge of your seat. It really tests your debate skills. How well can you argue your point, and how well can you like assess what they're trying to say, and then have a decent rebuttal for that. I do enjoy and I miss debate sometimes.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And I think the other cool thing about debate is it widens your world a lot. Mm-hmm. You're exposed to so many things that you likely would never have even researched before. Like, I didn't know a whole lot about, wind energy. And there was a debate I did on wind energy. And I found out, apparently, the expectation is hopefully that we'll have enough wind energy by 2050 to power, I think it's something like 35% of the nation's energy. I don't think we're on track for that.
Yeah, no, point. That doesn't sound like it. Yeah, it doesn't sound like that's what we're doing right now.
No.
Yeah.
But that was the expectation, I guess, in 2016, and now it's very clearly not. But you just get exposed to what agendas are internationally or nationally, regionally even, and what are the policy arguments people are making for some of these things. And I found that just pretty interesting and really enjoyed it. And you also learn to just enjoy public speaking. You meet a lot of really brilliant people, like so many smart people in debate, really great speakers, really creative people, really intense people. It's really big douchebags too.
Yes.
Sometimes.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Dude.
There's a little bit of everything, and the douchebags are as big as it gets in debate.
So insufferable. And honestly, I don't know if it was this way in high school debate, but I think most people would imagine college debate is kind of like a bunch of Poindexters, just like a bunch of dorks, just glasses on, just excuse me.
Right.
But no, it's it was like, I don't even know, like a frat house at these debate tournaments, dude.
Yeah.
Like, just abusing drugs, abusing alcohol, like nationals. Like,
I heard. I mean, I'm good friends with Ben.
Pie.
Yeah, I'm good friends with Ben too, and he talked about it. Yeah.
Yeah, Fyro Pie was like, man, I want to sleep at 9 p.m. that final night when everyone was partying, and I was glad I did.
Right.
Because I didn't want to be around for any of that. I think elevators got shut down. Like,
I'm sure
rooms were trashed. There was like a few set of floors that were just straight up hot boxed. And
yeah,
this is a nice
I'm
hotel.
sure. Yeah, they're doing it in nice places.
I can't imagine the venue would permit Fyro Pie back again.
Right.
That.
They would. Yeah. No, I'm sure they would not. And it has its upsides and downsides because I met a bunch of. It's the same thing. I met a bunch of kids who were. At some point we should start, but this conversation's good. I met a bunch of kids who were just assholes, man. Like, kids are mean, especially in debate, because they will do everything they can to get under your skin. Because if they get some kind of emotional response from you, they've won the debate. You just start, you start losing your composure. You start, not that this happened to me, but I've judged a couple of times, and you can just see it, like, oh man, this person's getting under their skin, like they're losing it. And they, like, their arguments just get weaker and weaker because they're, like, getting frustrated. They're getting angry with it.
They're emotional.
And I'm like, man, kids are suck, man. They're mean. On the other side, sometimes some debates just sucks, man. Like, I remember our last topic for CX was, should the United States substantially increase its economic and or diplomatic engagement with the People's Republic of China, which is a mouthful in and of itself. Ooh. And there's some debates where you would just argue about the meaning of the word substantial for an hour and a half. And it's like, oh my God, that's like emotionally draining. I don't want to argue about the meaning of substantial because so you can argue like the points, or you can do like a theory debate, and you could just argue that the United States shouldn't do anything because we don't know what substantial means, and you can't define what substantial means. And it's like, then it's broken up into two, like economic or diplomatic engagement. Well, what does diplomatic engagement mean? So you could have an hour and a half debate on what diplomatic engagement means. Like, they would pick apart everything.
On the one hand, I could picture how annoying that level of, like, pedanticness would be.
Yes, pedantic is the correct term. Yes, sir.
But I also think that to be able to make that kind of distinction is representative of like a decent amount of debate acumen, honestly. Just because there is room for debate in that phrase. Like maybe you can reasonably infer what it would mean to an extent, but you can also like realistically, if such a question were presented at a congressional debate, like those are the types of questions that would be hammered out.
Yeah. I agree. It's
not fun.
It's not fun at all. No, not in high school debate. I agree. I mean, I see the usefulness of it, but in high school debate, no. It's more of people trying to. So the topic at the beginning of the semester. Each semester they release a topic, and so you're working this whole semester on refining your AF and your neg, and you have multiple AFs and multiple negs depending on who you're debating. So if I do the substantial debate, someone will have a neg to combat that. Or if I do the diplomatic AF, someone will have the diplomatic neg or something like that. And a lot of times we share cases too. So like, or not cases, but like the whole thing. I guess they did call it cases. I'm a little slow on the lingo. It's been a minute. But they would, copy your whole research and everything over, and you would copy it from them too. So over the course of the semester, you got like maybe 50 different speeches prepped up, and the substantial ones they were awful.
And then it's like a lot of that research is just thrown out the window because it's not even pertinent to the debate now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because they've just completely hijacked the topic at that point. I can see how that would be very frustrating.
There has been debates. So do you know what spreading is?
Yeah.
It's when you rap God
30 arguments, hopefully 10 of them stick because you can't hit them, and then I win.
Exactly. And then you say it as fast as you can. So you can have a theory debate where you talk about what is the theory of debating. So if like someone opens up and starts spreading and starts going a million miles an hour, your next point, or like when it's your turn to speak, you like slow down and you say, the point of debate is to have a good conversation between two people to come into a general consensus of what's going on. It's for the knowledge and everything. This person just came up here and threw 20 points at me. This isn't a real debate. And you would just argue for an hour and a half about what it means to debate people. So you could like have some really cool conversations about like actually engaging China or the theory of debate.
Yeah, and then like ultimately your judge is gonna say to both of you like, I feel like neither of you were engaging each other's arguments the entire time, even though like maybe it's the spreader's fault for just hijacking the topic of the debate and then trying to spread, and that not being a viable method of debate really. Like not one with integrity anyway, but like you're both criticized because it's like by arguing like, hey, they just spread. Like I'm not even acknowledge a lot of those arguments because they're not pertinent to the discussion.
Exactly.
It's like now the judge has to try to be as impartial as possible and evaluate strengths and weaknesses, and it's a big frustrating card.
Extremely, yeah. So it got to the point where most judges will say like, hey, I don't allow spreading. Like just right off the bat. And sometimes you would ask, there was a lot of people who would ask like, hey, are you cool with spreading? And sometimes judges would be like, okay, yeah, I can keep up. But there's other times, like even when I was judging, I'm like, nah, that's not cool, man. Nah, don't spread.
Yep.
And I think those were the better debates. But I mean, some people like came in with the mindset of spreading. So.
Yep. Yeah. And I think there was also the classic one where it was like, this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and then nuclear war. And
yes. Yes.
And then every argument was broken down into just nuclear war.
Nuclear war, yeah.
Or an organization was compared to Hitler, like by the end of every debate. And it's like...
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, boy. Okay. So, why don't we just go watch Barney while we're in Fairy Tale Land 2?
Right,
Spend our time a little better and enjoy it more.
Yeah, you enjoy it a lot more, honestly. Let's get started. I don't even know what we're going to talk about because we've touched on everything now. So I do want to hear your points on inflation.
Okay.
And how we got to the point we are. Like I said, I'm not very knowledgeable. So a lot of this will be me listening.